The Battle of Two Santas. It was a cold, snowy night. The entire town was alive with the excitement of Christmas Eve. Houses glowed with vibrant lights, and the streets echoed with carols and laughter. Children gathered around fireplaces, sipping hot cocoa, their eyes sparkling with anticipation for Santa's arrival. But little did they know, this Christmas was unlike any other. There were whispers in old legend passed down through generations. It spoke of two Santas. One was the jolly, kind-hearted Santa who brought gifts and joy. The other was his dark counterpart, an ominous figure who thrived on fear and mischief, leaving chaos in his wake. Most believed it was just a tale to keep children in line, but this year, the legend was about to come to life. An elderly man named Mr. Hawthorne often told the story at the town's Christmas gatherings. "Beware," he would say, "for when the spirit of Christmas weakens, the dark Santa emerges from the shadows. He feeds on greed, selfishness, and despair. Only the true Christmas spirit can keep him at bay." Despite Mr. Hawthorne's warnings, the townsfolk brushed it off. They were too caught up in grand festivities, extravagant decorations, and competing for the best Christmas displays. Somewhere along the way, the warmth of giving and togetherness faded, and so the dark Santa stirred. The signs were subtle at first: flickering lights, decorations falling from walls, strange shadows flitting across snowbanks. A bitter chill lingered in the air longer than usual, making even the fireplaces seem dim. As the clock struck midnight, snowflakes spiraled heavily, blanketing the streets in silence. A crimson sleigh descended slowly from the starless sky. Excited children pressed their noses against frosty windows, their hearts pounding with joy. But something was wrong. The figure steering the sleigh had a sinister presence. His suit was tattered, and his beard hung in jagged strands, his eyes void and black-pierced through the cold night. This was not the Santa they knew. Fear spread like wildfire. Some hid under blankets, while others whispered prayers. Parents locked their doors, unsure of what to believe. But just when hope seemed lost, another sleigh emerged from the clouds, gleaming like a beacon. The real Santa had arrived. Santa Claus, radiant and warm, landed gently among the rooftops, spreading joy with every laugh and wave. He visited home after home, leaving gifts under Christmas trees and restoring the festive spirit. But as he left each house, shadows slithered behind him. The dark Santa crept in his wake, snatching gifts and casting eerie silhouettes that danced menacingly on the walls. The town grew restless as strange occurrences plagued the night. Children woke up to find their presents gone, replaced by lumps of coal or twisted toys with hollow eyes. Snowmen toppled over with jagged smiles etched into them. In one small home, as Santa bent to place a toy beneath the tree, he froze. Behind him stood his twisted reflection, the dark Santa, grinning wickedly. The two locked eyes, and without warning, a fierce battle erupted. The air grew heavy, and the wind howled as snow swirled violently around them. The clash of the two Santas rattled the town to its core. Lights flickered, and shadows twisted unnaturally across walls. The dark Santa's laughter echoed ominously, sending shivers down the spines of those who heard it. As the battle raged on, the good Santa's strength began to wane. The dark Santa fed off the fear in the hearts of the people, growing stronger with each passing moment. Children huddled by their windows, trembling as the clash lit up the sky. Furniture rattled, and icicles shattered from rooftops. The town watched helplessly, fearing that Christmas might be lost forever. Among the children, one boy stood apart. Ahmed, a brave and kind-hearted child, remembered Mr. Hawthorne's words. With trembling hands, he retrieved the old brass bell his grandfather had gifted him. Stepping outside into the storm, he rang the bell with all his might. The sound echoed through the town, cutting through the howling wind. The dark Santa winced, clutching his ears. The real Santa's eyes gleamed with renewed strength. With one mighty blow, he struck the dark Santa, sending him sprawling into the snow. But the dark Santa was not so easily defeated. He clawed his way out of the snow, eyes blazing with fury. He lunged at Ahmed, his bony fingers reaching for the boy. Santa intervened, shielding Ahmed and pushing the Dark Santa back once more. "You cannot win," the Dark Santa hissed. "As long as greed and fear exist, I will return." Santa placed a hand on Ahmed's shoulder. "And as long as there is love and hope, you will never triumph." The battle continued, but Ahmed kept ringing the bell. One by one, the townspeople emerged from their homes, carrying bells, chimes, and anything that could make noise. The entire town joined in, their collective hope and love resounding in the wintry air. The Dark Santa's form began to fade, dissolving into the swirling snow. With one final roar, he disappeared beneath the ice, leaving only a faint, chilling whisper. Santa knelt beside Ahmed, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You saved Christmas, my boy. Never forget, as long as love and kindness fill your heart, darkness will never prevail." By dawn, the town awoke to a scene of serene beauty. Gifts lay under every tree, and the streets shimmered in golden light. Ahmed's story spread far and wide, reminding everyone of the power of hope and the true essence of Christmas. Even now, on Christmas Eve, if you listen carefully, you can hear the faint ring of a bell, and when it chimes, rest assured that the light of the good Santa will always outshine the shadows of the dark. Legend says that deep within the frozen woods beyond the town, a faint silhouette lingers, watching and waiting for weakness. But as long as the bells ring on Christmas Eve, he dares not step forward again. Return of the Dark Santa. A year had passed since the Battle of Two Santas, and the town had never been more united. On Christmas Eve, bells rang from every home, a reminder of the Dark Santa's defeat. The streets were brighter, and the spirit of giving flourished. But somewhere beyond the town's borders, in the frozen woods, the legend was far from over. Deep in the heart of the forest, where even sunlight dared not linger, the snow began to shift. Beneath the ice, faint shadows stirred. Hidden in the ancient frost lay the remains of the Dark Santa, his body frozen, but his essence very much alive. He was waiting, watching. One crisp evening, Ahmed walked home from school, the same brass bell hanging from his backpack. The sky was overcast, and the trees swayed ominously. He paused by the forest's edge, feeling the weight of unseen eyes. But the moment passed, and Ahmed continued on his way. Unbeknownst to him, something moved among the trees. A single crack echoed through the woods as frost splintered over the ground. That night, Ahmed sat by the fireplace. His family gathered around the Christmas tree. Laughter filled the room as they exchanged stories, but Ahmed couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The flames in the fireplace flickered unnaturally, casting long shadows across the walls. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Ahmed's father answered, but no one stood on the porch. Instead, lying in the snow was a small, blackened Toya, cracked wooden soldier with hollow eyes. Ahmed's heart sank. He recognized the twisted craftsmanship. It was the Dark Santa's work. "Dad, don't bring it inside," Ahmed said quickly. His father laughed, brushing off Ahmed's worry. "It's just an old toy, probably left by some kids messing around." But as the door closed, Ahmed saw faint footprints leading away from the porch, prints far too large to belong to a child. Over the following days, strange things began happening around town. Lights flickered, even though the power was steady. Snowmen built by children appeared with menacing faces the next morning. Christmas trees mysteriously fell over, their decorations shattered. On Christmas Eve, the unease deepened. Ahmed walked through the town square, clutching the brass bell tightly. The carolers sang louder than usual, as if trying to drown out the creeping dread that lingered in the cold air. As midnight approached, the wind howled violently, and the stars above seemed to disappear. The townsfolk gathered for the annual lighting of the grand Christmas tree, but as the mayor prepared to flip the switch, the tree lights burst into sparks, plunging the square into darkness. A collective gasp filled the crowd. In the distance, faint sleigh bells echoed through the night, but they were distorted wrong. The sound didn't bring comfort. It chilled the soul. Ahmed stepped forward, raising his bell. "He's back," he whispered. The townspeople exchanged nervous glances. From the edge of the square, a figure emerged. He wore the same tattered suit, his beard jagged and blackened with soot. The dark Santa had returned. With every step he took, the snow beneath him withered into icy ash. He lifted a twisted sack over his shoulder, the contents inside writhing unnaturally. Ahmed knew what he had to do, but this time, he wouldn't face the dark Santa alone. "Ring the bells," Ahmed shouted. "All of you." One by one, the townspeople followed his lead. Bells rang out across the square, echoing into the forest. The dark Santa snarled, his form flickering like a shadow caught in firelight. But this time, he was prepared. He reached into his sack and pulled out a cursed bell, blackened and cracked. When he rang it, an icy wave rippled through the crowd. The townspeople stumbled back, their bells momentarily silenced. Ahmed's bell remained clear and bright, but it wasn't enough. The dark Santa advanced, his hollow eyes locked onto the boy. Suddenly, a brilliant golden light descended from the sky. A familiar sleigh emerged from the clouds. The real Santa had returned. With a mighty leap, Santa landed between Ahmed and his dark counterpart. "I thought I told you to stay buried," Santa said calmly, his eyes narrowing. The dark Santa grinned. "You cannot stop the shadows forever." The two Santas clashed once more, but this time, the townspeople rallied behind them, ringing their bells louder than ever. The fight stretched across the square, but with each chime of Ahmed's bell, the dark Santa weakened. Finally, with a powerful strike, the real Santa sent the dark figure crashing into the ice, the ground splitting beneath him. The dark Santa's form dissolved into the snow, his blackened bell shattering into countless fragments. Santa turned to Ahmed, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You've saved Christmas again, my boy. But remember, the dark Santa will always wait for weakness. Keep the spirit of Christmas strong, and he will never rise." As the sun rose on Christmas morning, the town was aglow with warmth and light. The grand tree stood tall, and the bells of Christmas rang with renewed strength. But deep in the forest, beneath the ice, a faint echo lingered, the distant sound of sleigh bells that promised the legend was far from over. Return of the Dark Santa, Part 3. The year after the second battle between the two Santas, the town had been peaceful, too peaceful. The memory of the Dark Santa's defeat lingered in the hearts of the people. But with time, they began to forget. Christmas had returned to its normal cheer, and the town's spirit was as bright as the lights on their trees. Yet, deep in the forest, a frost had begun to grow colder, darker. The winter was harsher this year. Snow blanketed the town in thick layers, and the wind howled as though it carried a warning. The townspeople went about their lives, but the unease was palpable. Ahmed had never forgotten what had happened. His brass bell, now worn with age, hung heavily from his backpack, a constant reminder of the horrors they had survived. But as time passed, even he began to wonder, was the Dark Santa truly gone? One night, as Christmas Eve approached, a strange chill settled over the town. The stars above seemed to disappear behind a thick, oppressive fog. People whispered of shadows moving at the edge of their vision, flickering in the corners of their homes, but no one spoke too loudly. No one wanted to believe it was happening again. Ahmed stood at the edge of the forest that evening, staring into the thick, icy trees. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as a faint sound echoed in the distance, a low, eerie ringing of bells. They sounded like sleigh bells, but twisted, distorted, as if the metal had been corrupted by something dark and ancient. His heart raced. He turned to leave, but the wind howled louder, and the ground beneath his feet seemed to tremble. From the depths of the forest came a chilling whisper, like the scraping of ice on metal. The sound of a voice, cold, hollow, and sinister, drifted to him through the mist. "You thought you had stopped me, but I am eternal." Ahmed's pulse quickened as he realized the truth. The Dark Santa wasn't gone. He had only been dormant, waiting for the right moment, waiting for the spirit of Christmas to weaken, and now it had. The sound of bells grew louder, closer. Ahmed sprinted back toward the town, fear clawing at his chest. As he entered the square, the first signs of something terrible appeared. The streetlights flickered, casting long, erratic shadows. A distant rumble filled the air, and then the ground shook violently. People rushed out of their homes, confusion and fear etched on their faces. From the forest, a figure emerged. The Dark Santa was back. His tattered suit was worse than before, torn and frozen with patches of ice clinging to it. His eyesons, hollow and black now, glowed with a malevolent red light. His beard was longer, jagged, like dark tendrils of shadow reaching toward the heavens. He dragged his sack behind him, but it wasn't full of toys this time. It was full of something far worse. The townspeople recoiled, a chill running through them as they realized the full extent of the terror they faced. The bells they carried seemed weak, their once bright sound now muffled and distorted. The Dark Santa lifted his hand, and the bells in the town began to ring on their own, a twisted, shrill sound that grated against the ears. "You cannot fight what you cannot see," the Dark Santa intoned, his voice an icy wind. "Christmas is not about joy or light. It is about fear, and this time I will not be stopped." The sky above them darkened, clouds swirling as if torn by an invisible force. The wind screamed, and the ground beneath their feet cracked open, revealing a deep, gaping chasm of frozen darkness. From it, twisted skeletal figures began to rise, creatures of frost and shadow, each one carrying a blackened bell. "Ring the bells," the Dark Santa commanded, his voice booming. "Let the world hear your despair." The people of the town tried to fight back, ringing their bells in unison, but the sound only made the Dark Santa grow stronger. His laughter echoed through the square, cruel and hollow. With each ringing, his power grew. Ahmed knew they couldn't defeat him this way, not with bells alone. He glanced around, his eyes searching for something, anything that could help. His gaze landed on the grand Christmas tree in the square, the same tree that had been a beacon of hope the year before. But now it was shrouded in shadows, its once glowing lights flickering erratically. Beneath the tree, a strange, dark aura pulsed from the ground. His breath caught in his throat. The tree, it was connected to the forest. It was the anchor that had kept the Dark Santa at bay all this time, and now it was the source of the town's corruption. "No," Ahmed whispered to himself. "It's not the bells, it's the tree." Without a second thought, he ran toward the tree, the ground trembling beneath his feet. The Dark Santa's eyes locked onto him, fury flickering across his face. "You think you can stop me? You will never stop the darkness." Ahmed reached the tree just as the Dark Santa's twisted minions began to surround him. He could feel the cold, malevolent energy seeping from the ground, freezing his bones. But he didn't stop. With trembling hands, he grasped the brass bell at his side and rang it with all his might. The sound was pure, a sharp, clear tone that cut through the darkness. The ground shook again, and the sky above cracked open, revealing a shaft of golden light. The light poured down upon the tree, bathing it in warmth. The dark aura pulsed once more, but now it began to fade, disintegrating in the face of the bell's sound. The Dark Santa howled in rage, his minions retreating into the shadows. "This is not over, boy," he spat. "I will return." But as the golden light enveloped the square, the Dark Santa was consumed by the light, his form dissolving into smoke and frost. The town was saved for now. As the first light of Christmas morning broke through the clouds, the dark presence finally faded. The townspeople stood in silence, their eyes wide with disbelief and fear. The tree stood tall once more, its lights now glowing brightly, as if the darkness had never touched it. But as Ahmed walked home, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what had occurred, he could still hear it, the faint, distorted ringing of sleigh bells. Far off in the distance, the Dark Santa was gone, but the shadow he cast would always remain. Somewhere, deep in the frozen woods, he was waiting, and next time, he would be ready. Return of the Dark Santa, Part 4. The town had been quiet for months, the memories of the Dark Santa's return slowly fading. Christmas came and went without incident, and life settled into a comfortable routine. The frost that had gripped the town seemed to have lifted, and the air was lighter, as if the very spirit of Christmas had returned in full force. But for Ahmed, there was no peace. He knew the truth: the Dark Santa had not been defeated. He had merely retreated, biding his time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. The feeling of unease had crept back into his bones, and it had nothing to do with the chill in the air. He carried his brass bell with him everywhere now, its weight a constant reminder of the fight still to come. He had been searching for a way to truly rid the world of the Dark Santa. But no one in the town seemed to understand. Every time he mentioned his fears, they laughed it off. "It's just a bad memory," his father would say, clapping him on the back. "The Dark Santa's gone for good. It's all in the past." But Ahmed knew better. He could feel it in his bones. The Dark Santa was coming back, and when he did, he would be stronger than ever. It started with strange dreams. At first, Ahmed dismissed them as nothing more than nightmares, the remnants of fear and worry. But the dreams became more vivid, more real, and the message they carried was unmistakable. In the dreams, he saw the Dark Santa again, emerging from the frozen woods, his eyes glowing with a red, soulless light. But this time, there was something different. The Dark Santa wasn't alone. Beside him, standing tall and looming, was something even worse. A figure made of pure shadow, swirling and shifting like smoke, with eyes that seemed to pierce the very soul. It spoke in a voice that wasn't a voice, but a whisper carried on the wind. "The shadows are rising, Ahmed." Each night, the dreams grew darker. The Dark Santa's laughter echoed in his ears, a haunting reminder that the battle was far from over. And the shadowy figure, whatever it was growing stronger, feeding off the fear that had returned to the town. One night, unable to sleep, Ahmed made his way to the town square, his brass bell clutched tightly in his hand. The full moon hung low in the sky, casting long, twisted shadows across the streets. The air was cold, biting, and the silence felt heavy and natural. He walked past the grand Christmas tree, its lights flickering like dying embers, and paused at the edge of the square. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the stillness. "You're too late, Ahmed." The cold dread washed over him. He turned, his eyes scanning the shadows. But there was no one there. His heart raced, his breath coming in short gasps. The voice came again, but this time, it seemed to surround him like it was coming from everywhere at once. "You think you can stop the darkness? You think you can stop me?" The ground beneath his feet began to tremble, and the air grew thick, charged with a sinister energy. Ahmed gripped the bell tighter, but he could feel the weight of it growing heavier, like it was being pulled by an invisible force. "I've waited a long time for this, Ahmed." The voice was almost a whisper now, cold and final. "You thought you had sealed me away, but you have merely delayed the inevitable. The darkness is eternal, and now it will consume everything." Ahmed's pulse raced as the fog around him thickened, swallowing the square. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, warping into grotesque shapes. Figures began to appear from the mist, dark, hollow-eyed shapes, like twisted reflections of people. Some resembled the people of the town, but their faces were blank, their eyes empty, filled only with shadows. Suddenly, the bells of the town began to ring, but this time, they weren't the clear, bright sounds of Christmas cheer. The bells rang with an eerie, discordant chimea sound that set his teeth on edge, that made his blood run cold. The bells rang as if calling to something, summoning it. Ahmed's heart stopped as he turned, and in the distance, he saw it. The Dark Santa. He was back, standing in the center of the square, but he wasn't alone. The shadowy figure stood beside him, towering and shifting, its form constantly changing, like a cloud of smoke. The Dark Santa's eyes gleamed with malicious triumph. "I told you I would return," he said, his voice dripping with dark satisfaction. "And now, I have a new ally. The shadows have awakened, and they hunger for your fear." The ground shook again, and Ahmed felt the weight of the shadows pressing in on him. He tried to ring his bell, but the sound was muffled, as if the very air around him was absorbing the sound. The Dark Santa raised his twisted sack, and from it, something dreadful emerged, a black, writhing mass of darkness, like a living nightmare. Ahmed could feel the fear rising in his chest, but he refused to give in. He knew that if he let the fear take hold, the shadows would win. With trembling hands, he gripped the bell and lifted it high. "I won't let you win," he said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. The Dark Santa's hollow laugh echoed through the square. "You cannot defeat what you cannot see, boy. The shadows will swallow this town whole, and there will be no escape." But Ahmed's resolve hardened. He closed his eyes and focused on the sound of his bell, the pure, clear ringing that had saved the town before. He wasn't alone. The people of the town, wherever they were, could still hear it. And with that thought, Ahmed rang the bell with everything he had. For a moment, the darkness seemed to hesitate. Then, the light from the bell began to pulse, radiating out in sharp, brilliant waves, pushing back against the shadows. The Dark Santa screamed, his form flickering in and out of existence as the shadows around him writhed and shrank. "You think this will stop me?" the Dark Santa hissed. "You think light can defeat the eternal darkness?" But as the light from the bell grew brighter, the shadows began to melt away, consumed by the pure, unrelenting glow. The shadowy figure beside the Dark Santa writhed and twisted as if in pain, its form disintegrating, falling into nothingness. "No," the Dark Santa snarled, his form beginning to dissipate. "This is not the end." And with that, he vanished into the night, leaving only the echo of his laughter behind. Ahmed collapsed to his knees, exhausted but victorious. The shadows had receded, and the light of the bell had once again held the darkness at bay. The town was safe for now. But deep down, Ahmed knew that the Dark Santa's return was inevitable. The battle was not over. As the first light of dawn broke through the clouds, the bells of the town rang again, this time, clear and bright, their sound echoing across the square. But in the back of Ahmed's mind, a cold thought lingered. The darkness was still out there, and it would return.